All right. Stepping on the gas to make sure I'm all ready to go for the first reading, first first weekend of He Knew He Was Right by Anthony Trollope, which is the Lonely Trollope read-along for this month that Steve Donahue is doing. So I immediately jumped on board and when I heard about it last night and listened to the first three chapters sort of on my way home, and I've spent the rest of today um, listening at every chance to He Knew He Was Right, chapters 4 through 20, to make sure I am all caught up and ready to go for when Steve launches in. I don't think he's going to actually talk too much about the first 20 chapters. He's going to talk about the book in general, but I also know that for myself, it's nice to have that. Okay, 20 chapters a week. Let's get the first 20 chapters done. So I did, and I'm well immersed in the book. So as we saw in the first thing, this was this young couple, Lewis and Emily, getting into a real big fight over General Osborne sticking his nose in, a older 50-year-old gentleman, so a couple of years younger than myself, um, coming in and having intimacy with Emily, and Lewis getting really pissed off about this, getting really jealous, and her and unfortunately Emily being of such a thing that she's pretty stubborn and wants her own way. There's a little bit further into the novel, another character says, "Oh, who could stand her? She's always wants her own way," which is like, as the narrator notes, it's like, yes, just like that character also wants to get her own way, so they don't really get along very well together and notice that flaw in each other because they both want their own way. um, but yes, so it looks like maybe they might patch things up. Nora, um, Emily's younger sister, is definitely does her bit to try and patch things up. There's Milbra, a Duchess, Dowager Duchess Milbra, who's trying to make go between, but things just kind of go from bad to worse, and she doesn't back down. He won't back down. Um, General Osborne seems to be, well, not an evil motherfucker, is one of these guys who's got his vanity of like, oh, she likes me. Oh, and I'm making trouble. Oh, I must still have it, kind of that kind of thing. And of course, continually is putting his oar in, sending letters. He was trying to help her with getting his parents, the governor of this colony, the Mandarin Islands, to come in, and I'm assuming the Mandarin Islands is made up, to come in to testify at a House of Commons thing that he's a committee that he's a member of, but it doesn't even look like it's going to actually happen this year. So that's actually all for naught. But it escalates. It escalates and escalates. And, he's like, you need to stop seeing this guy. You need to stop having any contact. And she's like, no, he's my friend. How dare you suggest otherwise? You're insulting me by doing this. It's like, she will not be ruled by him. And it's one of these things, as I was listening to it, it's like, it's funny. As a Victorian, as this book kind of reading all these book novels has given me, it's like, oh, she's being very unreasonable. Then I kind of catch myself and go, wait a minute, I'm not a Victorian. If this was a contemporary situation, I'd be like, this guy is really super jealous, and he needs to get a grip, and she should be able to do what she wants to do. Now, that said, if she can't particularly humor him in that, then maybe it's not really the marriage that should be. Um, so it's funny that way, that it's like I kind of caught myself being a Victorian in there. It's like, oh, she's really being unreasonable. I mean, he's also being unreasonable as well, but I don't know. Maybe that's the guy in me, the jealous guy in me that's still there. But I also did say last night, it's like you kind of have to kind of trust, but he doesn't trust, and inevitably things fall out, that they separate, that she goes off to live in the country. Now there was, it's interesting, the lawyer, Mr. Gotobed, I have come in contact with before. He's another one of these reoccurring characters, that probably handy little tool shelf that Trollope has of 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 characters, is a lawyer. Mr. Gotobed was the lawyer in the oh, God damn it, in the Miss Mackenzie novel, where he was the lawyer, her lawyer, and had discovered the irregularities in the thing. So it's kind of cool to see him again in here. But you know, it's done through lawyers and stuff like that, and they at first there's a kind of a preacher kind of type who's very strict, and she's like, no, I'm not staying with him. And it's finally we do get set up with someone else who actually ends up getting set up in a larger house, just to be able to kind of accommodate her and take her on, which they do, her, Nora, and her son. She has a son, a lesser Lewis, someone says, and so they're set up there. And all at the same time, we also get introduced to Miss Stanbury, who is Howard Stanbury, who is the one that actually Nora is actually interested in. There's another kind of lord guy that she's just not in love with, that she indeed tells during these chapters, like, no, I don't love you. I can't be with you. And it's like, people are like, oh, why aren't you? You got no money. That was your big chance, and especially since your sister is getting tossed out in her ass for her stuff, you're not going to get any more mixing with high society. But he's like, I don't love him, and he does ask her, do you love me? And she couldn't lie to him. If it had just been simply a matter of, I can learn to love you, let's get married kind of thing. But it's like, I don't love you. And so, she puts off that marriage, because she's this Howard Stanbury guy who was taken up by his aunt, Mrs. Stanbury, who actually had him educated to be a lawyer and all this stuff, but he found he just didn't have the knack for it, couldn't make money out of it. And what he actually wanted to do was write for the kind of radical newspapers, which completely scandalizes Miss Stanbury, who is very conservative, hates change, and so really hates, like, doesn't even want to read anything he's actually written, but just hates the whole thing. At which point he's cut off with money, and he just has to support himself. Now he can support himself on his writerly wages for these penny newspapers, because they're radical newspapers, but he can't support a family. So it's like he's not really with prospects that are going to be like, he's probably needs to marry someone rich, not someone completely poor like Nora. But she just can't do that thing. Now Miss Stanbury, who has kind of completely cut off Howard Stanbury, decides that she's going to take on another one of the nieces, because there's all these things, and that she'll take on a niece, Dorothy. And oh God, Miss Stanbury has a most wonderful domestic, Martha, who is a very kind of plain-spoken woman who kind of interacts with Miss Stanbury, who's like very like, oh, this is well, ma'am, we can't do that. Yeah, okay, ma'am. It's like she's just hilarious. I love Martha. But she is keeping, I think she's in the sort of same neighborhood as where they have ended up, and indeed knows, because yes, she knows the Stanburys is that's who they've actually come to live with, who Emily and Nora have come to live with is the Stanburys, and you know, there develops a thing where a gentleman caller comes to visit um, the Stanbury home, and they want to see Miss Llewellyn, I think it's Llewellyn, but it's actually no, it doesn't want to see Miss Llewellyn. It wants to see Nora because it is this young, not young, 40-year-old 40-year-old rich guy again, and he wants she he makes another try to, will you marry me, and she does turn him away again, and it's like, oh god. But the word gets out that, oh, some middle-aged guy has come from London asking for Emily, and it's like, holy crap. It's like they think that it is this General Osborne has come sniffing around again, and Miss Stanbury is very offended by all this, sends a sniffy note, and the elder Stanbury daughter not really hates Miss Stanbury, and they have an wonderful exchange of letters where they just rip into each other, and the older Miss Stanbury has to apologize, and but she doesn't apologize directly to the older daughter, and so the older daughter talks back again, and it's like, oh, that vixen. It's like they really don't like each other. However, at the same time, fucking Osborne is like, oh, he's all the words come back of all this. It's like, well, I need to go see her. So he writes to her saying, like, oh, I'm going to go down and visit a friend who's just just very close to the thing, so we could meet. And that wouldn't be bad, would it? And she is of the mind. It's like, oh, she kind of likes the heat, the adventure of this, and she doesn't consider herself under her husband's rule because he has cast her out. So she is actually going to meet up with Osborne at some point, and it's just like, oh man. And it turns out that Lewis has really gone off the deep end and has hired a former police officer, now a private detective, to tail Osborne. So he is aware that the guy has come to the neighborhood. Now Howard Stanbury learns of this and says, do not do this. If she finds out, that is a horrible insult that you've set a detective on her. It's like, oh, not on her, on General Osborne. Yeah, it's as good enough as setting it on her. It's like, so he convinces his friend to, okay, I will go. I will tell him I'll give him your letter saying dismiss, and I will talk to Osborne and get him to fuck off, or at least hopefully shove off or something like that. I don't know. We will see. But it's like, oh, it's a tangle, and you can just see the husband with each step just getting worse and worse, as where you kind of see him like as annoyed at the beginning. It's just like he's going to get worse and worse as we go along. And we have the poor couple with Howard and Nora. And it's like, oh, will these two kids ever be able to get together? Will they ever be able to get the money to be able to get together? It's Trollope. Hopefully so. Hopefully so, in a very nice, humane way that will happen somehow. But yeah, that's the start. That's the first 20 chapters of He Knew He Was Right. And it's like one of these things of like, she knew he was right. She knew she was right. It was a kind of a righteous novel in a way. It's like she was right. And it's like it was really getting fucked over by kind of a patriarchal society. Now this one with male jealousy, it's got one of these like, controlling. They're trying to keep him sympathetic, but he's controlling and maybe provoked, but very controlling and not trusting. And having hired this detective is like, it's a real step over the line. It's like, it's sort of, once you do that, I think as Howard says to him, Howard says to him, it's just like, well, if you need to spy on your wife with a detective, it's no wife worth having. If you think that, then it's already over. And you kind of think it is, in a way. It's one of these truisms of like, if you feel like you need to hire a private detective to trail your spouse, well then that's probably, that pretty much shows there's no trust left, at least on your side of the marriage. And that's pretty deadly. All right, I will leave it there because I babbled for 15 minutes on that. That's my check-in for the first bit of this lonely trollop. Hooray!